Did Bill Maher just call out Rachel Zegler in front of millions? Rumors have been swirling online that the outspoken HBO host took a subtle yet brutal jab at the Snow White actress during a recent segment. He didn't name her directly, but fans are convinced the sharp criticism was aimed squarely at Zegler and her disastrous Disney PR run. And honestly, the timing lines up almost too perfectly. The speculation began after Maher went on one of his signature rants, blasting Hollywood, brats, who trashed the very projects that gave them a platform. He mocked young actors who complain about iconic roles, calling it
by removing the traditional
self-sabotage
dwarves,
in real
Disney
time.
eliminated roles that could have gone to
instantly lit
further
up,
alienating
pointing
audiences.
fingers at Zegler, whose
Just
scathing
leaving
comments about the
fans disappointed.
1937 Snow White remake turned a fairy tale into a full-blown PR nightmare. Could Maher have been referring to her? Maybe. But whether he was or not, the damage is done, and the backlash is only getting louder. So how did we get from beloved childhood classic to multi-million-dollar disaster? Let's break down the rise and fall of Disney's most cursed remake ever. When Disney first announced that Rachel Zegler would play Snow White in their highly anticipated live-action remake, reactions were mixed, but not yet hostile. Fresh off her breakout role in West Side Story, Zegler was praised for her voice, charisma, and screen presence. To Disney, it seemed like a no-brainer. A rising star, some vocal chops, and a fresh take on a classic. But almost immediately, fans started raising eyebrows. Zegler didn't resemble the traditional image of Snow White, a character literally described as having skin as white as snow. Still, many were willing to give her the benefit of the doubt, hoping her talent would carry the role. But something felt off. It wasn't just the casting, it was the vibe. Zegler wasn't leaning into the classic fairy tale magic. She seemed almost detached from the character itself. What could have been a celebratory moment for her career, instead, felt lukewarm, with fans unsure if this new version of Snow White was meant to honor the original or rewrite it entirely. At this stage, the controversy hadn't exploded, but a storm was brewing. All it took was one misstep in the press to shift public opinion, and Rachel Zegler was about to provide exactly that. It all started with an interview, or rather, a series of them. Instead of promoting the film with excitement or reverence, Rachel Zegler made headlines for her dismissive and even mocking tone toward the original 1937 Snow White. She called the story outdated, suggested it was creepy that Snow White falls in love with a man she just met, and proudly declared that her version wouldn't be about a man saving her. While these statements might have been well-intentioned or aligned with modern sensibilities, the delivery came off as condescending. And that's when the internet snapped. Disney fans, especially longtime loyalists, were furious. Social media lit up with accusations that Zegler had no respect for the source material or the character she was portraying. Hashtags like "She's not my Snow White" and memes mocking her interviews began circulating at lightning speed. Instead of being seen as a fresh, empowered take, Zegler's comments felt like a rejection of everything people loved about the original. In a matter of days, the narrative flipped. Zegler wasn't a bold casting choice. She was a PR liability. Her remarks triggered a domino effect of backlash that would eventually overshadow the entire film. And there was no putting the genie back in the bottle. As the backlash against Rachel Zegler gained momentum, Disney found itself scrambling to contain a public relations disaster. What should have been a smooth promotional campaign quickly turned into crisis control. Internally, execs were reportedly stunned by the rapid fallout. Zegler's interviews, meant to build hype, were doing the exact opposite. Trailers were downvoted, teaser clips were mocked, and pre-release buzz turned into a meme fest. Disney started scaling back its marketing efforts, even quietly adjusting press schedules and limiting interviews with Zegler in hopes of avoiding more viral slip-ups. Behind the scenes, sources say damage control meetings became daily occurrences. The marketing team, once confident in the film's rollout, now had to recalibrate everything. Rumors even swirled that parts of the film were being re-edited or delayed, not because of technical reasons, but to soften the blow of the controversy. Public trust in the project was fading fast, and Disney knew it. Worse still, the backlash wasn't just limited to fans. Influencers, film critics, and even industry insiders began voicing concern over Zegler's comments. When both the internet and Hollywood turn on your lead actress, that's not just bad. PR. It's brand suicide. But the real blow was yet to come. When the movie finally hit theaters, by the time Snow White finally limped into theaters, the damage had already been done. But what audiences saw on screen didn't help the situation. It made it worse. Instead of a magical reimagining of a beloved fairy tale, viewers were treated to a visually awkward, emotionally flat, and creatively confused mess. Gal Gadot, cast as the evil queen, raised eyebrows from the start. Critics and fans alike questioned the logic. How could a character be jealous of Snow White's beauty when Gadot looked like a literal supermodel next to Zegler? The dynamic simply didn't land, and it pulled viewers out of the fantasy. Then there were the CGI dwarfs. Following Peter Dinklage's critique about perpetuating stereotypes, Disney chose to replace the 7 iconic dwarfs with a group of bizarre, mismatched, magical creatures, and the internet tore them apart. Leaked set photos went viral for all the wrong reasons. The VFX looked rushed, the tone was inconsistent, and the charm of the original was nowhere to be found. Instead of a nostalgic hit, Snow White felt like a soulless product. It wasn't just a bad film, it was a film no one asked for, built around a lead that many audiences had already rejected, and the box office numbers reflected that. Despite the chaos leading up to its release, Disney still hoped the Snow White name would carry weight at the box office. But when opening weekend numbers came in, those hopes were crushed faster than a poisoned apple. The film debuted at #1 in the US with just 43 million. Decent on the surface, but far below expectations for a production with a ballooning budget that reportedly hit over $240 million. International numbers offered no redemption. Globally, it barely crossed 87 million, leaving industry insiders stunned. For a brand as dominant as Disney, those numbers weren't just underwhelming. They were catastrophic. Theaters were half empty. Families stayed home. Even die-hard Disney fans weren't showing up. On social media, users posted pictures of empty screening rooms and mocked the film's poor reception. Merchandise tied to the film, plush dwarves, collectible dolls, themed costumes, gathered dust on store shelves. The writing was on the wall. Snow White wasn't just a flop. It was one of Disney's biggest failures in modern history. In a cruel twist of irony, the film about inner beauty and timeless values had become the poster child for everything wrong with Hollywood reboots. And at the center of it all, a lead actress who was rapidly becoming unhireable. As the backlash intensified and box office numbers plummeted, Rachel Zegler appeared to realize she had made a colossal mistake. Practically overnight, her messaging changed. Gone was the bold, unapologetic tone about rewriting the fairy tale. In its place were teary-eyed interviews, heartfelt monologues, and emotional attempts to reframe her connection to Snow White. Suddenly, she was claiming to have adored the character since childhood, calling her brave, pure-hearted, and a personal inspiration. But by that point, the audience wasn't buying it. The damage was already done. Viewers saw the shift not as growth, but as desperation. Comments flooded every new interview, calling her fake, calculated, and insincere. Her earlier remarks, where she ridiculed the original plot and dismissed the romance, were still circulating in meme form. Zegler's sudden pivot felt less like genuine reflection and more like a last-ditch PR move approved by Disney's damage control team. Hollywood insiders began whispering about her being radioactive. Casting directors were reportedly hesitant to associate with someone who had managed to insult both fans and executives. It wasn't just that Snow White flopped, it was that Zegler's very presence had become a liability, and no amount of backpedaling could rewrite the narrative already burned into the public's mind. Rachel Zegler didn't just lose control of the narrative, she became the narrative. As the film's collapse became unavoidable, social media turned her into a living meme. Clips of her most tone-deaf interviews, calling the original Snow White creepy, joking about not needing a prince, and casually dismissing Disney's legacy, were edited, remixed, and shared by millions. She quickly became the poster child for what critics dubbed Hollywood arrogance. And once the internet turns you into a joke, it's almost impossible to shake that off. Even her West Side Story breakthrough, once praised for introducing a fresh face with real talent, started getting re-examined under a harsher light. Comments she'd made about that role resurfaced, where she hinted it wasn't the experience she had hoped for. Fans were baffled. Why keep trashing the very films that built her career? It didn't feel like honesty. It felt like biting the hand that fed her. Rumors swirled that major studios had begun backing away quietly, afraid to risk another media circus. She might be talented, sure, but with so many other actresses in Hollywood who could sing, act, and stay out of controversy, Rachel Zegler was suddenly more trouble than she was worth, and everyone knew it. With Snow White officially labeled a box office bomb, Disney was left in full-blown crisis mode. Internally, executives scrambled to spin the situation, but there was no real saving face. Reports began circulating about massive budget cuts, upcoming remakes being quietly shelved, and a growing internal push to rethink how the studio approaches modernized classics. What was supposed to be an easy win, a remake of One of Woe, the most iconic fairy tales ever told, had turned into a cautionary tale for the entire industry, and the fallout didn't stop with Rachel Zegler. The studio faced heat from multiple directions. The decision to replace the iconic Seven Dwarfs with CGI magical creatures backfired spectacularly, especially after actors from the Little People community called out Disney for eliminating rare roles they once had. Many felt Peter Dinklage's initial criticism had unintentionally hurt more than it helped. Memes about the awkward-looking creatures went viral, further dragging the film's image through the mud. Disney, once untouchable in the realm of family entertainment, had been knocked down hard. The company's reputation for reimagining classics was now under fire, and for the first time in decades, it became clear even the Mouse House isn't immune to a full-scale PR disaster. At the end of the day, Snow White was supposed to be a nostalgic return to Disney's roots, a celebration of legacy, magic, and timeless storytelling. Instead, it became a painful lesson in what happens when a studio loses touch with its audience. What began as a bold, modern reimagining spiraled into a PR nightmare filled with tone-deaf interviews, viral memes, and a lead actress seemingly at war with the very story she was hired to tell. Rachel Zegler's rise and rapid fall serves as a warning not just to actors, but to studios as well. You can't rewrite history without understanding the emotional connection fans have to it. And when you mock that history, even unintentionally, you risk alienating the very people who once would have championed your work. Add in poor casting decisions, controversial creative changes, and a staggering budget, and the result isn't just a flop, it's a full-blown cultural punchline. In the end, Snow White didn't need a villain. It had one, a perfect storm of ego, miscommunication, and corporate blindness. There was no happily ever after, just millions lost, careers stalled, and one of Disney's most treasured legacies left in ruins. Sometimes, not even a magic mirror can save you from a disaster this big.